There's a preseason game in 2 days or 3 days, however many days from us.
Very
Again,
soon.
recording on a Monday, very soon, and it's Thursday night at 7 o'clock Minnesota time.
No, it's at 9 o'clock Minnesota time. It's 7 o'clock local time in
Oh, okay.
Seattle.
So
So
that's
it's a late one. It's
yeah,
a late one. It's
that's
it's about
good.
as late as you'd get in the preseason. I don't think. I mean, in recent memory, I mean these games are normally quite reasonable. Even when they played in Denver last year, it wasn't this late.
Yeah.
Um,
What? And this is I'll kick this one over to you because I feel like I have talked too much tonight, and so I want to know your number one guy. Not that the fans should watch, but that you, as a human being, as a Vikings fan, who is like making you stay up for the preseason game.
Honestly, I'll kind of tie two things into one here. It's Jay Ward.
Oh.
Um, one thing that caught my mind with him was, just for those who don't grind Vikings draft tape, and even remember who the Vikings drafted this season. He was a late round pick, defensive back out of LSU. I say defensive back on purpose because he wasn't a corner, he wasn't a safety, he wasn't a linebacker, he wasn't a nickel. He kind of did everything. And Kevin O'Connell was asked specifically last week about what they're doing with Jay Ward. Like, where is he going to play? What's his position going to be? And something that Flores has talked a lot about is flexibility and having guys who can play multiple positions. And you can get into whether or not it's a good thing to have guys who play tons of positions, because you want to master maybe what one or two things that you do. But that's neither here nor there for this. I mean, what they've talked about with Ward from the jump and what his college experience has taught us is this guy can kind of play anywhere apart from really the defensive line. And so you're looking at a very versatile guy. I mean, Isaiah Simmons comes to mind. I don't think they necessarily have the same body type. Simmons is more built like a linebacker. Ward is more built like a cornerback. But I'm really interested because they listed him as a safety on the first depth chart, and maybe that's just because you got to put him somewhere, and you can't put him two times in this whatever. I'm interested to see where they slot him, and also just how he does. Guys like him, and we mentioned Blackman, and these late round picks, they don't get a ton of publicity just because they're late round picks and they're not flashy wide receivers that drive Lamborghinis, and so you're gonna get a lot less discussion about them. But I'm really interested because kind of for the first time in recent memory, the Vikings are at least talked about as having sort of a Swiss Army knife on defense. And we won't get to see Byron Murphy's Swiss Army knifeness. So I'm really interested to see what Jay Ward can do.
I wonder how much they're gonna deploy the Swiss Army knife, though, and that's always my concern. Is you hear about Jay Ward and he's playing, he's lining up outside, and then the next snap he's lining up as a safety, and then the next snap he's a linebacker, and like he's doing all these things, and then preseason comes and he's just like playing like center field as a safety, and so you kind of lose that almost. But I get it. You don't want to show Tampa what you're gonna do against them. And you don't want Tampa to have any edge in that game, come week one. And so I very similarly, and I talked about it on last week's show, which if you haven't listened to, check it out. It's still relevant. Jaren Hall, to me, should look really good in preseason action. They have him listed unofficially as the third QB on the depth chart. And apparently last week, I think it was like it was like on Tuesday, which is that awkward time window where it's after we've recorded the show, but it's before the show goes on YouTube and the podcast apps, which you should subscribe to on everything that you have. Like Nick Mullins didn't practice. He was like sick or something, or he had to leave. And Jaren Hall got an opportunity to be the backup quarterback, and he looked like trash. He was throwing picks, and he was throwing bad balls, and he just looked flustered, which is kind of to be expected from a rookie. And so after I spent the entire show saying he was, the next Tom Brady or whatever, but I do think that going up, because Flores is given the offense hell. I mean, he's sending everything at him. He's blitzing. He's showing different looks. He's doing all these things. And apparently from what reports out, it's a physical camp. It's been, Flores is holding nothing back. It almost feels like joint practices where you're like, legitimately, like, these guys are opposed, like, they're not the Vikings practicing. It is the defense and the offense just fighting it out. And so now Jaron Hall gets an opportunity to go up against Seattle's defense, which is going to be resting a lot of starters, I'm assuming. I mean, they might play some guys, but, like, by the time he gets into the game, he's going to be playing against third and fourth stringers. He's going to be playing against guys that just need a chance to make it in the NFL, that are running very basic either man or zone coverages. There's not going to be a lot of, fake blitzes. There's not going to be, this guy lined up here, but then he did this thing, and he's not going to have to do all that. It's just, can you beat man or zone? And if he doesn't look good, I'm going to be concerned. I mean, I'm not going to be ready to cut him and just let him go off into the sunset, but, like, I'm going to be concerned. But if he does look good, I am going to contain myself and not declare him the GOAT, because I understand what he's up against. And I am also excited to watch the secondary, because, like, if Jay Ward's going to be a Swiss Army knife, he needs to be able to play, like, center field safety, or he needs to line up outside. He needs to be able to do these things if that's what he's going to be doing in the regular season. And I think he'll get more of an opportunity to kind of flex on the second and third team offense than he will maybe against, like Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison. So I think it's going to be really exciting.
I think it's kind of a no duh, but kind of to that whole point about seeing, what Jaron Hall does. We need to see what these backup running backs do.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really telling as to if the Vikings go and try and bring a veteran in to be Madison's backup. Because if Wongwu and Chandler are just not, cut out for actual real life reps, there's going to be some shuffling. I mean, let's just be clear. Like, just because this is who's on the Vikings roster today does not mean that these guys will be here and that there won't be new folks in a month. If you remember last year, Nick Mullins came in very late after the preseason. Both Mannion and Kellen Mond were cut, leaving the Vikings with only Kirk Cousins at quarterback. So they had to go get Nick Mullins. I mean, if you pay attention at all to just like what the Vikings are doing transaction-wise, they're signing and releasing guys almost every day. And so there's going to be different roster moves that are made. And if the running backs don't cut it, unfortunately, they could be some of the folks, not necessarily cut. I don't think you're going to see Kene Nwangwu cut or even Ty Chandler cut for that matter. But what you might see is a veteran running back get brought in. I don't think it will be Dalvin Cook, just to get that out there.
I almost made that joke. You said, like, maybe they bring in a veteran, and I was like, is there a veteran that maybe knows the system and maybe will come in? Like, maybe one of the Cook brothers or something. But
wouldn't that be so funny if they brought him back for, like, $3 million and he was Madison's backup?
That man is a jet through and through. And it's going to be weird as heck seeing the 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers in the dark green handoff to a 29-year-old Dalvin Cook after I've watched them do battle for so many years. It's going to be weird.
Yeah.
But, I will say, on your point about Wongwu not being cut, I have a surprise cut that I would like to bring to the table. And I have a PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. Slide one. Wongwu might get cut because Brandon Powell is fielding kickoffs and punts.
Yep.
And he's looking good in camp, like running routes and making good catches.
Yep. That's very true.
And so it almost seems like Brandon Powell, I don't know how much value the kickoff is going to hold now that they've changed the rule. I really don't. And I hate that they changed the rule, but it almost makes Wongwu, if you don't trust him to be your backup running back, you don't really need that good of a kick returner anymore. Like, they're either going to boot it out of the end zone or you're going to fail catch it. And if you have somebody that you trust to maybe take one to the house, that's cool, but I think that they trust Brandon Powell to take him to the house because he's having a good camp. And they also trust him that, break glass in case of emergency, he can step in and be a productive wide receiver. So
Yeah,
just
that's
kind
interesting.
of just an idea, just sliding it out there that
Yeah.
I don't want him gone, but I see the mentality of like, well, what if it comes down to, do you cut Wongwu or do you cut Andre Carter III, who almost guaranteed does not make it through waivers to go to the practice squad? And to me, again, shiny new toy, I would rather have Andre Carter because I'm a big fan of his physical,
Yeah.
ability, like his God-given talent of being very tall and very athletic. And I think that he can develop into something special. Whereas Wongwu, it's like, okay, Zimmer didn't really give him any snaps, but that was because Zimmer was a crotchety old man and he doesn't know how to run an offense. So it must be a Zimmer thing. But then, new coaching staff, Kevin O'Connell's in the house. Yep. He's not really giving him snaps either. So I don't know. I don't know what the value is for a kick returner in the year of our Lord 2023.
It is an interesting idea, especially considering, just the roster crunch that you always go through. And, we talked about this last year, sort of like, what are they going to do with, all these running backs? And are we going to lose some to the practice squad? Are we going to lose some, period? And this year, you always run into this roster crunch. And if you can get Powell to both return punts and return kicks, you could just cut Jalen Reagor too.
Yeah.
Obviously it depends on how well he plays in camp and what he does in these preseason games and everything as well. But it's, if you feel like you need to kill two birds with one stone, that could be a potential option. And Powell obviously has history returning punts. And so you could throw Jordan Addison as the backup punt returner, if you need to have somebody in case of emergency or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, that's an interesting thought exercise. Chandler is currently listed as the backup kick returner, and he did that a little bit last preseason. He might have even returned a kick during the regular season. I can't remember. But, with that, Chandler's probably not going to get cut. So you would have multiple options to return kicks. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm saying.
I have and we can start wrapping up now. I have a prediction for the preseason game, and it is along these same lines of the Brandon Powell hype train that I am now 100% on. And if you've noticed a trend with my hype trains that I've been getting on, it seems that every time I say on Monday I'm on the X hype train, player X has a really bad Tuesday. So let's hope that doesn't keep up. Last week it was Jaron Hall, and then he threw 52 picks. So let's hope that doesn't keep up. The Brandon Powell hype train, I think he's going to have a really good preseason. I think he's going to be returning a lot of punts. I think they might even let him return some kickoffs just to see if he can. And I don't think he muffs them. I think he fields them clean. I think he makes the right decision on the kickoffs, which is fair catch. Unless they have, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't fair catch it at this point. Like, I really can't. It's like playing a $50 slot machine, and it's like, why would you do that? Why would you take that risk? Like, the world, just for how infrequent it is, doesn't seem worth it. So I think Powell's gonna have a really good Thursday night. And I guess this is like a mini game ball, a preseason game ball pick, maybe. I'm going to go special teams for the first game ball of the season. How about me going with Brandon Powell to win a game ball? Only time it'll happen.
I'll throw another special teams game ball out there. Why not Jackpot Lesney?
Heck yeah.
Get the rookie kicker some boots. And let's see how he does up in the worst possible place to kick.
No, it's the best.
Seattle, Washington.
I want O'Connell to put himself, and I know that the Blair Walsh kick happened in, in Minnesota, outside this whole thing. I still want Kevin O'Connell to recreate that situation and send pronounce it again.
Lesney.
Is it Pod Lesney? I don't know why I thought there was a K in there. He's a kicker. Duh. But no, Pod Lesney, send him out there to recreate the Blair Walsh kick and tell him, like, all the pressure. You miss this kick, you're done. You make this kick, you got a job. That's it. This is your tryout. Go. And if he drills it, then you know that he's got the stones to kick.
And you got to tell Ryan Wright to hold laces out.
Yeah.
You got to recreate the entire thing perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know that you can. Well, hang on. The kick was laces? Was it laces out or was it laces in?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by out and in. The laces were facing Walsh.
Okay, so I don't
know if that means in or out.
I come from the Ace Ventura school of laces, where like laces out is how you're supposed to hold it, and laces in is where,
I understand.
Like, okay. And like there's the like Finkel-Einhorn, that whole thing. So we just picked a couple of special team game balls for the first ones of the season. That is almost disappointing. That is man, we could have said something crazy. We could have said like N'Keal Harry's going off for 320 yards. And
he might not even play. I mean, he got pulled in today.
I think he's playing. I really do. Like, I think that's the only reason I can justify that they signed him, is that they needed someone for Jaren Hall to throw to in the fourth quarter. And they didn't, because
nobody else is healthy.
Yeah, like Nalo probably won't play because he's dealing with some stuff. Tristan Jackson, thank God, avoided ligament damage, but he's not playing. Like,
it's gonna be Blake Priel, baby.
Yeah, it's Blake or Priel, and it's N'Keal Harry, and they're gonna ball out because they've got the best quarterback in the NFL throwing to him in Jalen.
All right, I'll go with my final thought here. It's not even a final thought from Will. I just thought it was an interesting thought from Kirk Cousins. I think it was late last week. He was asked about which specific Vikings defenders stood out to him and that have made training camp difficult. You talked about how Flores' defense was really just giving the Vikings offense hell. And I thought it was really interesting who he mentioned. There were some obvious ones: Harrison Phillips, Harrison Smith, Marcus Davenport, Danielle Hunter, kind of, run-of-the-mill star players. You kind of would assume that those guys would get some traction, but the three that were interesting to me were Jordan Hicks, Cam Bynum, and Caleb Evans. He specifically mentioned Cam Bynum as someone that he trusts when he's watching the defense. Kirk Cousins is not a defensive coordinator. He is not a defensive backs coach, but he is a quarterback, and I would like to think that quarterbacks understand what it takes to play defensive back more than maybe the average offensive player. And I just thought it was interesting because guys that we have maybe, not had a ton of confidence in Bynum and Evans, I'm a big Evans guy. I don't know how many Vikings fans really are, but I thought it was interesting that those guys were called out, especially considering that neither of them are necessarily going to be starters. Kurt gave him some flowers. So, I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting thing that he mentioned, and maybe he tells us a little bit about how well those guys are progressing in camp so far.
Yeah, I will have my final thoughts really quickly. Make sure that you follow this guy. Oh, let me fix my thumb. Kind of this over here. You know who I'm talking about. Follow him on Twitter @WillBadLose. Check out the Bad Loser blog and VikingsTerritory.com. And make sure you shop Unified Athletic. Follow the show. Twitter @LTB Vikings and sub to the YouTube and all that nonsense. But my final thoughts will be very short and sweet. Just add it to the reasons why I can't fall in love with Kirk Cousins is they say, hey, who are you excited about on the defense? And he lists Cam Bynum, Jordan Hicks, and Caleb Evans is actually a good answer. That one is one that I'm like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. But like, okay, dude, like you're going with like the safety that our first round pick can't beat out, that like he's pretty good. I wouldn't say he's like, top 5 or anything. He's a good safety. And you're going with a linebacker that looked, slow as molasses all of last season. So like, what are we doing? Like, what do we do? Those are my final thoughts. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about the preseason game. And then we'll do this interesting new concept. We'll talk about the next preseason game because there's another one. And then there's another one after that. And then
wild.
55 people lose their jobs all at the exact same time. It's crazy. So we'll be back next week. Same time, same place. You know where to find us. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on the notifications if you really love us. And we'll talk to you guys next week.